few years ago, I interviewed Kristin. We did a 3-hour interview one day, and then I discovered that the recording hadn't worked. So I got in touch with her and said, "Hey, can we do it again tomorrow?" She said, "Sure." So we did another one the next day. And we've remained good friends over the years and got to know each other better. And I have great respect for Kristin's depth of experience, her integrity, and just her all-around fun, loving, interesting personality. I'm really blessed to be a friend of Kristin, and you're really blessed to have come to this presentation.
Well, welcome. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming. One of the things that's particularly unusual about my awakening is there's a visual component that's gone along with it. And it's not just visual, it's where I experience a vision, physics, light, sound, form, all is the same thing. Consciousness, all is the same thing. So I could describe my experience in many different ways. And what I'd like to do is speak a little bit about it in such a way that offers a transmission for you to perhaps have your own experience of what I'm speaking about in the way that your system can integrate it and organize it. So the way I see things just in an overarching way is that we're all one single consciousness, which has brilliantly made itself into individuated expressions and experiencers, which is why you can know yourself as an individual and you can surrender in deeper and recognize yourself as one. You can also surrender in and discover nothingness, and I'll speak to that as well. So part of this brilliance, in order for oneness to create this massive, stunning existence that we are, in order to create that sense of differentiation, there has to be some level of form and substance to actually experience another. Your consciousness of that individuated sense of me that recognizes you're different than someone else is part of that construct. And so when people are trying to awaken, usually what the inner call is to meet that edge of the sense of self that you recognize that's individual and surrender through into the totality of what you are. So far in my experience, both remain. That the individuated aspect remains because it's a part of the function for one single consciousness to do this magical thing that's happening right here in this room. So I'm not interested in obliviating your ego. I'm interested in showing you the doorway so that you can pass back and forth through that doorway of the individuated lens into the totality that you are. I'm just going to be quiet for a moment. One of the other things that has happened for me through this wild unfolding is that whenever a particular realization occurs for me, it comes in a way that is then available through a transmission. So I've witnessed through the changing, the unfolding that's happened for me over these years, deepening of the understanding, and when that lands, then that comes through in the healing sessions that I offer for people. And so that level of refined awareness and embodiment that's here is like a tuning fork. Like if any of you know, if you have two tuning forks in a room that are the same note and you hit one, no matter how far away the other one is, it's also going to start resonating because it's the same frequency. And so where I rest as oneness, you are there because we are the same. That oneness vibrating here through this individual lens is the uniqueness of that oneness here. But resting as that, then all that truth that we are all the same can also then be amplified. So It's just a simple explanation of transmission, that I don't own anything that you are not. Right? We are the same. We are absolutely the same. But how that singular truth manifests is going to be unique through your own beauty, your own gorgeous, flowering, unfolding design that oneness has created you as. So I'd like to start with just a little bit of a opening for that transmission, and invite you to just drop into your body, drop into the ground of being. One of the things that's kind of funny sometimes about spirituality is people are trying to be spiritual and get out of this reality, or transcend this reality, or bypass some experience that they don't want to be having. My experience in this whole process is that awakening becomes a deeper and deeper embodiment. I'm going to speak a little more, but I would love for you to feel your feet on the ground, really rest in the vibrancy of your body, and allow my words to just be a sound that offers what it offers. So I'll speak a little more about embodiment, and don't worry if my words don't necessarily make sense to your mind. Just let yourself receive what's present. In my awakening path, in that initial surrendering through that sense of I am, and surrendering through that veil, part of the process was an opening through the I am of everything. And in the embodiment, the experience of the physical sense of self that couples the expanded sense of self keeps getting more and more refined. And so in the beginning there was an opening through past life memories, and opening up through all that aspect of consciousness, and feeling all of the details of the felt sense of those experiences. And I'll just clarify that for me, all those lifetimes are how one single consciousness organizes all of its experience. People can get caught up in whether it's real or not real, and I'm not so much interested in a debate in that way. I'm still speaking about the same one consciousness and how it organizes itself as human beings, as plants, as rocks, as water, as the earth, as planets, as atoms. It's one I am. And in this embodiment, the deepening opens as wide as it becomes small. And so, in the beginning of opening through the cosmic body, there was an experience of all atoms and particles as my body. And the same way you can move your body, I was experiencing the atoms of this universe as my body. And then as this continued, there was opening to another layer beyond that. On such a small frequency scale of being that couples the expanse. And so right now as I'm speaking, I would love for you to soften and open in through your body, allowing yourself to feel the grounded presence of your being. And rest with the infinite spaciousness that is also present. When I rest in the deepest place of embodiment, I'm resting as an emanation of light and sound together that are not separate from each other, and that are not separate from love. And as this radiance of light, sound, love, frequency, there's a recognition of all radiance from this source self is both one stunning radiance and a uniqueness of frequency. And then I'm with this frequency as it starts transforming itself in through the layers of being into greater differentiation of light and color and sound and geometries. And coming through again into another layer of being. And then another layer of being that begins to look more and more like our humanness. And as I open in all of this, the subtle details of, it's tricky for me to find words for this. But again, just keep resting with the energy that is present here and available. On this small, small scale, it's like an atom that is so small and yet profoundly powerful. And this is what I wake up to in this depth of this radiance, is where we are a purity of being that is the power of an atom multiplied. And that the journey of awakening is one single consciousness creating itself in all these lenses to be able to see itself and experience itself. And the value of falling asleep is so that we can go on this journey of self-discovery. And there are experiences that would not happen if you fully remembered your totality. Each of your stories, your conditioning, your thoughts, are unique combinations of this fabric of creation. All this essence comes into being in infinite combinations. And you in your purity are a unique combination of this totality, and all your conditioning and your stories are unique combinations of the fabric of experience. And so we get to surrender through our stories, our experiences, and refine the depth of our understanding of what we are in the totality. It can be helpful to open through the infinite everything side of existence, to feel the fullness, feel the radiance, feel the totality. As we approach the nothingness, the system can respond with fear, and it's not necessary. If we understand that the container of our sense of self has an innate integrity that has a function, it can be easier to meet it in that surrendering through. So resting here for a little bit longer in this expansion that's happening, this light-filled opening. Let yourself drop deeper into this inner reality. So when you recognize that sense of self can just be a revolving door that awareness, consciousness can fluidly move through, then there doesn't have to be the terror of dying or annihilation or the different kinds of sensations people have when they get close to that surrendering point. And so just taking a moment in yourself, notice the fluidity on the inside. the experience of cessation or not existing or annihilation, that sensation is just that eye of the needle where you pass through one lens of perception into a larger totality. Just allowing yourself to continue to soften. Allowing the system to relax around that sensation of cessation. And this is the awakening game of being everything and surrendering through lenses of perception, lenses of a sense of self. And one can gradually become comfortable with the sensation of being everything and nothing. Simultaneously, inseparably. And as we continue to become comfortable in this mysterious, brilliant paradox, we rest as our wholeness and rest as the emptiness and the freedom, where each moment is an act of creation that dissolves, disappears simultaneously. And then our existence is not fixed. Our existence is a living act of being that creates itself anew each moment. Sometimes it's helpful to move through conditioning, through the storyline of the conditioning. And there's value in that. And sometimes the value is just stopping the story, putting the book down, and it dissolves. When you rest in yourself in this power of love and light and freedom, your conditioning is not over you. It is not in control of you. resting in this wholeness. You are the whole creative thing. Your conditioning are art pieces that you can keep creating or start over, do something different. And so this is not a place of bypassing. This is a place of complete and total full embodiment where you recognize you are everything. And you're resting both in the expansive, massive bigness and the small, tiny, nitty-gritty. And so nothing is left behind. It's fully met, fully loved, fully embraced. And from the depth of your wisdom, transformation arises. Things can appear limited in a certain way in this life. But when you drop into the depth of your being, there is a limitless, infinite source. And if you think about the power of the atom and how many atoms make up your body, you can start to remember, tap into the infiniteness that's here. That not only do you have access to, it's what you are. I experience everything as consciousness, as its own individuated I am expression. And so I experience water as a being, as consciousness, the air as a being, minerals as beings. Everything is the same singular I am. And so resting with this in through the body and the form, there's a recognition of a living collaboration. One of your liver cells has its own life as a cell, and yet it recognizes itself in relation to the whole liver. And then the liver has its consciousness, which recognizes itself in relation to your spleen and your heart and everything else. And so there's a massive collaboration of love that is happening every nanosecond. And I mean this literally when I was sharing of the sense of radiance of love and light and sound as one utterance that then comes into, creates itself as all form. There's a profound embodied recognition, living, I don't know what words to use, living embodiment of everything being love, and there's a massive love fest happening. There's a major love fest, all the little interactions in your body, all the chemicals. And you're not separate from your environment. You're breathing air, you're drinking water. There's an exchange. You're breathing air that someone else just exhaled. right? You're drinking water that has moved through the earth, gone through the skies, come down as rain, right? We're the oneness and the individuated expression at the same time, having a major love fest. I'm not sure if I did justice to something I was trying to explain, so I want to say a little more. It's the same way as a tree. The roots under the tree go as far as the branches can spread. And so in this awakening, the refined little tiny detail is like the roots, and the expansive oneness is like the branches. And so every time there's been a shift here, the deepening happens in the embodiment through the cells and the particles and the atoms and the protons and all sorts of things I don't have names for, which are not separate from the expansion. You can't separate the tree. You can't separate the branches and the leaves from the roots. It can't be done. And so in this deepening of this embodiment, the expanse continues and the refinement continues. And when we start getting that small, in that deep refinement, in the embodiment of it, for me there's just a continual deepening recognition of how powerful we each are. And in the wildness that's happening in the world right now, it's really important to remember that. And as we open through the depth of what we are and recognize we are source, we are life, we are love, we are truth, we are all that in the totality. When we recognize that, then that's like the different realities, these different dimensions or aspects of consciousness can seem to collapse together and be present simultaneously here. So that you don't just go into meditation and have some expanded experience and then go about your day the way you always do. That expanse, like the leaves of the tree, then is one with the trunk of your daily life, and your awareness then also spreads through the tiny roots that nourish the whole system. There's no separation. So we only have just a couple minutes left. I just wanted to ask if there was any questions relative to what I was just sharing about. And if, yeah. The question was getting tangled up in the mind and not quite knowing how to move beyond it.
And a head pressure.
And a head pressure.
Yeah. Physical head pressure.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's hard to do this both globally and specifically because it is so specific. So very simply, sometimes when a chakra is trying to open, there can be a sensation of pressure. So for me, in the beginning of meditation, years ago, I didn't see anything, and I would just I would get these extreme headaches right in the third eye, and I just kept meditating through it, and just kept dealing with it, and then it kind of eventually blew open. But in terms of the racing mind is just part of the fabric. It's just part of oneness kind of playing and talking to itself, and that's happening within a stillness. And you can notice the spaces between the words. You can notice the infinite silent backdrop in which those thoughts are dancing around in. So just a couple of things. There's a lot of different techniques or things I could share, but
chakras make sense and
great.
like the fifth and the sixth.
Great. Yeah, you're welcome. Does anyone else have a question? Yeah.
So my question is, you on the one hand you speak about awakening, and then on the other hand you do a lot of energetic movement, change, intermission, or however you want to call it. And what do you feel is the relationship between them?
One of the biggest fundamental things for me in terms of my awakening was surrendering through the sense of I am, and discovering that the sense of I am was made up, that it's a created aspect of the universe, and that the level of cessation that occurred in that was profound. And that still, for me, is the benchmark. There are things that are consistent for me throughout the deepening of this experience, in this awakening, and the one that's consistent is surrendering through that cessation point, whatever level of consciousness it is. And so in the awakening, that for me was the fundamental discovery, that not only was the personal sense of self a created thing in the universe, but the experience of I am was also a created thing in the universe. And so for me, in every surrendering, because the everything and the nothing are always together, that in the deepening, the everything then becomes embodied. And so the way I describe it is opening up through these different levels of consciousness, and opening through the soul layer and having access to my past lives and other people's past lives in very detailed ways. And then opening through the oneness of that plane. And then in opening through the oneness as one, then the skill set, the functionality of that then is embodied, and there's access to that. And so then surrendering into the next level of this cosmic layer, and remembering creating universes and feeling like the planets are my organs in my body, right? And that atoms are my flesh, like in this large way. Then a whole different skill set or aspect of consciousness, that functioning then becomes embodied. And so there's, it's just how it's happened here, that in that embodiment, then the level of transmission has come forward. And so then these healing sessions come forward and happen, and I'm present seeing people in a soul classroom where people's souls show up in this classroom in different dimensions. Same time I'm seeing everyone's bodies. There's different lesson plans that are happening in there. I'm saying different things in the soul classroom than what my mouth is saying. And I'm present with all of that. And then same things happening in other realms higher than that, where I'm aware of myself as light and functioning as frequency, and present with everyone as this unbelievable God, love, light sound that each of you are an expression of in this uniqueness. And so the awakening for me is a combination of a totally surrendered self. Because there's not a sense of action or doing. There is a complete surrendered identity through all of this in order for consciousness to function the way that it does. And so for me, the healing and the transmission and the awakening and the everything and the nothing it's just all one. It's just one all miracle that's happening. Thank you. you so much. Yeah, thank you so much.